to it or further from it, but assumes various aspects in relation to it that constitutes these modifications. That the continual motion of the heavens, with its innumerable universes and galaxies, extending into the uttermost conceivable and inconceivable fastnesses of duration, that this immense machine actually is responsible for continuous modification in the flow, volume, relationship of energies. Some of these energies, moving from remote areas, are of such long duration that they are like Plato's Platonic year, which lasts over 25,000 human years. Others of these relationships are so immediate that they are changing every few seconds. There are tremendous interrelationships of long and short time cycles, some extending into such infinities that we can scarcely calculate them. But every one of these cycles is supporting some organized movement in creation. And when these cycles end, these movements end. When these cycles are exhilarated or reach critical areas, critical situations arise, not only affecting man, but affecting the whole solar system and the universe. Thus we live within this tremendous field of energy which is being continuously modified. This modification undoubtedly is responsible for the gradual changes in human psychology. It makes available or less available mental energy, emotional energy. It results in world fatigues and the dying out of races and species. It also results in immediate and momentary fatigues, tensions, stresses, and the various problems with which we are familiar. If, therefore, we are seeking a formula, perhaps one of the simplest understanding formulas that we can have is that man, as a moral, mental, and emotional creature, is constantly interpreting the available conditioned energy upon which he exists. If this energy supply is lessened before it reaches him, we have one kind of phenomena. If man, through his own development, structural or psychological, becomes resistant or inconsistent with energy which has reached him, therefore does not permit it to move through him in its proper causes and channels, we have another kind of modification. So man is suspended between a moving universe, and all motion results in qualitative modification. Everything that moves changes. And because the universe is infinite motion, infinitely extended, so every moment of the universe is different. Man living within this constant difference experiences one of the first dilemmas, namely that he cannot understand such motion. Therefore, through his ignorance and failure to respond, he does not keep pace with the motion of energy. As the interval between his own motion and that of energy increases, he comes into conflict with the very life principles upon which he depends for existence. Such conflict may well lie beneath the entire problem of human adjustment, physical and metaphysical. Assuming, then, the possibility and the reasonable probability that man is an interpreter of universal energy, that he is a kind of small universe in which all these parts of the greater world have their miniature reflections and models, we then come to the conception that man's existence lies largely upon the foundation of his available energy. Energy is the source of function, and function for man is the reason for existence. Unless he is able to function in these patterns, he has lost the significance of these patterns to himself. If then we must seek for a basic explanation, let us remember that the very primary elements of ancient astrological thinking had to do with energy allotments. We divide people today into two basic types: those who are truly active and those who are tired. And today the majority of human beings is tired. This tremendous sense of fatigue which we all commonly experience and which makes life increasingly difficult for us. The ancients recognized this and declared that it was due to certain negative cycles, or cycles of negativity, moving in the great tidal system of space, that as the tides of the sea ebb and flow, so the tides of energy in man ebb and flow. Now, ebbing and flowing psychologically is a very important thing, inasmuch as we have to recognize that energy is never actually absent. It is merely not available in its accustomed form and demands a new or different kind of adjustment. This adjustment we have in psychological thinking in two types of persons, called the extrovert and the introvert. The extrovert is the individual who seemingly possesses more abundant immediate energies. The introvert is the individual in whose life these objective energies are not as obvious or abundant. Nature is only telling us, however, that in the character of man, as in the universe or in the growth of the oak tree, there are alternations of objectivity and subjectivity required in nature. In an effort to standardize living, we have totally ignored this. We have assumed that every individual at all times must be upon an equal energy footing. It is possible that he is upon an equal footing, but he is not able to exhibit or manifest identical, equal energy at all times. We know that sleep is intended to help us to catch up on some of our energy problems, but it does not go as far as our providing needs at the moment. Sleep may take care of part of our physical and psychological life, but there is something else that has to be considered, namely that nature has set this grand pattern that is caused to operate by an innumerable galaxy of suns, and that man, regardless of his egoism, is still merely a tiny creature within this incredible machinery. Man's happy adjustment depends upon his gradual understanding of the kind of world he lives in and his willingness to live according to what he understands when he does learn. This combination is essential to his life. Introversion and extroversion are natural motions. They are the result of the fact that nature recognizes that man has two needs. He has need for an external life, and he has need for an internal life. Experience shows that unbalanced, the overdevelopment of his external life has impoverished his internal life by his failure to enrich it with the conscious contributions of his own mental and emotional energies. As a result of his own failure, man therefore has come to the point where extroversion or self-expression outwardly becomes comparatively easy for him, and he is inclined to overdo it. Whereas introversion, or the return of the individual inward, the turning of his tides towards his internal life, has resulted in him coming face to face with a situation so deplorable that under general conditions, introversion has become practically synonymous with neurosis. Thus, instead of living a balanced life of internal and external polarizations, the individual is so depleted, impoverished, or neglected inwardly that he is like too many persons in our nation who drive a fine car and give all the sense of prosperity, but whose homes are neglected and chaotic. The individual, turning into himself, finds a condition which leads to suffering rather than adjustment. This is nature pointing out a defect, for man should be able to move inwardly and outwardly without tension or stress, finding an excellent, important, and useful life in both of these polarizations. If his energies were available to him, such would be possible. Now, other factors also contribute to man's life, and there can be no doubt whatever that time and place do influence the entrance of the human being into material life. The time and condition in which a person is born is valuable. The important thing has been ignored psychologically, although it is accepted historically. Can we deny that an individual born at the beginning of the Napoleonic Wars was under a different type of environmental heritage than the person that was born, we will say, in the Golden Age of Greece? Now, both may have had their wars and their troubles, but it is not possible to say that the time and place of birth are meaningless. The time the individual is born and the place where he is born, these circumstances bring him into a particular relationship with the patterns of history, and also with the relations and customs and attitudes of tribes and nations, racial groups, and social structures. Man being born today is born into a social pattern that did not exist 100 years ago. We know that in living, the average person cannot psychologically outlive his generation. If he is forced into conflict with his own upbringing and the years of experience through which he has passed, he becomes discouraged and confused. Psychology makes a great deal of heredity. Astrology simply states that man's universal heredity is derived from his relationship to universal energy fields. Also, that the peculiar circumstance of his birth is a relationship between energy in the field of space and the energy of the individual himself. Therefore, there is a time to be born and a time to die. And these things are within chemical fields of relationships, which are exact and inevitable in nature. By means of such laws and principles, not only is universal machinery maintained, but also universal ethics. The rightness of things is made possible because of the immutability of the universal pattern in which we exist. Also, in studying their nativities of persons in ancient times, the old stargazers studied, first of all, the individual's personality. The personality is that part of us which we exhibit to others. This personality is the container, the vessel, into which energies will be poured. It also reveals the immediate use that we shall make of the energy available to us, a use which will be in some way unique or different from the use made by another person. Consequently, personality becomes the final distributor of man's personal energy. It tells us about his enthusiasms, his interests, and his attitudes. It gives us